We're now streaming live on Facebook. Yes.
Okay, just hang in there for a bit while it all begins.
It says we're streaming live now, but you're just waiting for it to show up on Facebook, huh, Julija?
Yeah, for a little bit. So just wait there.
So hello, peeps, because you're probably here already. Here, I'll play a little tune. We're on.
Hang on. How come I can hear it? One sec. Oh, sorry. I have to monitor the there we go. That's all right. I have to monitor how we see people online because on my phone. So anyway, we are live. Welcome everyone to the Cosmic Intelligence Agency's Saturnalia. We've called it that because Saturn is the biggest thing on our minds at the moment, having just moved into Capricorn yesterday. Probably this morning for some, but yesterday. So today I've got two wonderful agents with me. I'm Agent 12, Julija Simas from Melbourne, Australia, where they call me Control, quite appropriately at the controls with all of this at the moment. And I have Agent 23. Hi, Gemini Brett. We still know you as Gemini Brett. Welcome to our coverage for the end of the year. And Agent 005, Arielle Guttman. How are you both?
Fantastic.
As well as one could be with the current aspects.
That's for sure, isn't it? What a way to end the year with Mercury retrograde. These last few days with Saturn in Sagittarius were pretty tense as well. Yeah. And it really kind of epitomized, I think, the whole Sagittarius Saturn story. Like it culminated with this, like, what the heck is going on with the news in the world and that type of thing, as well as us being just so busy trying to wrap up the year. I'm sure everyone out there is the same, hey? So look, I just want to put out a big hello to everyone that's joining us, of course, online, everyone that registered to be in the webinar. So we've got two things going on. There's the webinar, which is then being streamed live, of course, on Facebook. So, you know, at this time of the year, I just want to thank, first of all, our wonderful agents, the Cosmic Intelligence Agency agents, because they're the ones that keep our content going, the wonderful articles online, the webinars that we do, the membership program that we've got going on, which is just truly amazing because we've got such a global connected bunch of astrologers, and it's really quite thrilling to see that grow. It is still growing. So, you know, if you've been thinking about joining as an agent or a member of the CIA, there's so many good things for us all to do, and a lot of great things coming up in 2018, which I'll share with you a bit later. And also to all of you fans out there, all of our wonderful fans who keep sharing our stuff, who keep supporting us with subscribing and all that type of thing, that really means a lot to us and helps us, again, grow and continue the work that we do as the Cosmic Intelligence Agency, which we're very proud of because, you know, our whole idea of what we do is for the reason to ignite astrology into the world as a part of a natural kind of perspective of looking at what is happening out there, which we know helps us so much personally. And then our goal has perhaps been much more collectively. And we've seen that grow in other ways with other sort of astrologers taking that on board as well. So we're very, very proud of that. So thanks for being here with us as well. So we consider you all Cosmic Agency agents as well, because it's a big cosmic conspiracy. that we are astrologers doing this, and it's not crazy stuff. So where do we begin? Do we want to do just a quick wrap up of this year that was? Maybe Arielle, what, as we go through into 2018, glide into 2018, it has been a super fast, moving ahead type of experience for sure.
Yes. You want me to start?
You can say
well,
something.
it feels like we've been shot out of a cannon this year. I feel like, we were back in March, the three of us were together when we did that beginning of the Venus cycle webinar for the beginning of the synodic Venus cycle of her 584-day period. And it initiated the Aries morning star, which I was saying, was going to be a really fiery, bombastic type of year, and people, flying around and energies flying and words flying and, anger management, needing control and all that. But also fire along the land. We had eclipses in the fire signs and the nodes there. We had Saturn in the last degrees of fire, Uranus in the last degrees of a fire sign. So it's been a very fiery year. My theme, my catchphrase for 2018 going into it is coming down to earth, because we have a really pretty sizable shift from fire energy into earth energy. Of course, we know Saturn's ingress into Capricorn, its own sign, and this is where Saturn gets really serious, folks, when it's in its own sign, and so we're going to be, but it's earth, and it's a completely different feeling than fire, obviously. Uranus will also mid-year, about May something, switch into Taurus from Aries. That's also going from fire to earth. And then we have the Venus star point starting the year out in about another couple of weeks, already moving close to its what we might call the full Venus cycle for the Aries morning star, which we're still in that 584-day period. But I think since both of you work so closely with the Venus cycle like I do, you would probably agree that when it switches to the other phase, to the evening star phase, it still carries the initial message of the Aries energy, but it's going to play out much more in Capricorn, because now it's a Capricorn evening star. When is that? January 9th, 8th and 9th, probably in different parts of the world, or 9th and 10th. But somewhere around January 9th, it switches to 19 degrees Capricorn, exactly conjunct Pluto. So, we're going to be starting the year out with the Sun in Capricorn, Saturn in Capricorn, the Venus star point in Capricorn.
It's all
Pluto
about Capricorn, isn't it? It's such a Capricorn.
Like a whole, yeah. And then a little bit later in the year, Uranus coming into Taurus. So a lot of earth, fire into earth. So I call that coming down to earth. This is a year to really get grounded, to get organized. Capricorn wants structure. It's a sign ruled by Saturn. It's what we consider the management of the earth signs. We have the triplicity in earth, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, and Capricorn is like, someone was just asking me actually this morning, well, I think with all this Capricorn, there's all this business that has been lagging behind, the paperwork I need to do and legal affairs and, back taxes and things. I mean, yes, we could say definitely yes to all of that, but I have three little ideas about all of this Capricorn energy. One is, don't be caught breaking any laws. Saturn there.
I've got something to say about that soon.
Yeah, don't be caught keeping any big secrets with the Venus star conjunct Pluto. And we also have the Mars synodic cycle beginning with the Mars-Jupiter cycle beginning at that same week around this, I guess it's around the...
January 6th is the Mars-Jupiter conjunction.
January is huge, yeah. As you're talking about that,
Scorpio.
Maybe we'll talk about it a bit towards the end a bit more, but what I noticed was that this synodic cycle of Venus began in Aries, of course, ruled by Mars. Capricorn. Mars is actually, exalted in Capricorn, and then it finishes in Scorpio, or starts the new cycle in Scorpio. So we've got this really Martian flavored Venus cycle happening at the moment. So, and also Mars, a very big player next year, as it will retrograde near the South Node. So if we thought this year was, let's say, pretty wild in the way that of things just moving sort of ahead, but without any grounding, I think next year we'll see things moving ahead, but as you say, coming down to earth a lot more in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What I think with fire is all these ideas are flying around, and we're all words are flying and ideas and this and that, and we're all activated by all that energy, but we don't have a sense of what to do about it. I think Capricorn and all the earth signs is going to give us more of a sense of, okay, how do we manage this now? How do we move from here to there? And, what do we do about it? I think that Aries cycle also, I talked about earlier in my blogs this year about the fiery warrior goddess riding in on her horse. And then, early summer, winter for you, but early summer for us, we had Wonder Woman come out, and it was like this explosion of what I call, she was the perfect Aries morning star archetype for me, because if you saw the film, I really recommend this film, because she was the loving Venus kind of energy of believing in saving the earth and the world from the evil forces and all of that. But she was strong and beautiful, and she was strong and courageous, but very loving. She had the perfect marriage of Athena and Aphrodite in her. And I just felt like that was a really good Aphrodite Venus blending with Athena, where they can come together. And that's kind of what we have to be right now.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we are. It's kind of what we're being called to be.
Yeah. Well, it's also really interesting, again, with the Aries warrior archetype, female archetype warrior, is the Last Jedi that just came out, and it's all focused upon a female Jedi. Not only that, we had the Me Too rise up of the women's campaign, right, the Women's March, and probably quite a few other things. So what about for you, Gemini? It's been such an Aries type of, year. So as we are three.
Venus expressing herself through fire, through Aries.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about the Capricorn point a bit more later, but what about for you, Gemini? How do you see the wrap up of this year and into 2018 in a nutshell?
It's a big nut. I want to talk about this star. This is the Mercury star. And Mercury's doing some really cool things right now. Like, we look at where Mercury is stationed retrograde. He conjoined Saturn. I'm going to speak Pacific time. That's just the dates that I know, on November 27th, and then stationed retrograde shortly thereafter on the day of a Gemini full moon, right? And in the last degree of Sagittarius. So right before going from fire to earth, as Arielle said, Saturn just did, Uranus will. We have a lot of that energy, I would say, fire to earth, of the most subtle fire into the most solid earth. And it really is the image of incarnation. And as it is in the case of a human incarnation, it's usually married to the art of forgetting, right? So there's something about when we come from energy into matter, or we might say spirit into body, that we're meant to forget so we can have this new experience. And I think that's one of the, I don't want to say dangers, but it's one of the potential karmic loops that happens, I'm finding, when Saturn returns home to Capricorn. There's a lot of reasons that Saturn makes home in Capricorn. One is that Saturn's south node. So Saturn's actually coming back to the ecliptic plane for the Earth-Sun relationship. That's Saturn's furthest point from the sun. Saturn's aphelion is and in fact, on the day that Saturn stations retrograde next year, it's April 17th, he's at the furthest distance from the sun. And that means Saturn's moving slowest. Saturn is coldest. These are things that Saturn digs, right? Like when Saturn's in Cancer, it's like 2 years in that sign. In Capricorn, 3 years. So there's a lot about slowing down. In fact, this lunation that just began a few days ago with Sagittarius new moon, it's the slowest, longest lunation of the 21st century. It's about 6 hours longer than most new moon cycles. So there's a lot about slowing down, bringing that energy into reality. Now, how does that serve us? Well, one is there has been a lot of inspiration and a lot of fire, right? And it's not just reactive. There's response. Like when we be able to bring it down into earth, we can take more pause, and we're not just starting revolutions that won't be seen through. Yeah. But we have to, I think, we don't have to, but I believe there's an invitation, an opportunity now to remember. So when Saturn returns to Capricorn, it's like the end of a 29.5-year deal, right? He's coming home. And I'm finding that part of that is a purging mechanism to kind of release the last 29.5 years. This goes back to February 1988. And so I've been having a lot of intentional remembering practices and embodiment practices. And I actually believe that Mercury is really serving us in this ability not only to bring the energy into matter, so like lots of inspirations. Like one of my fun examples right now is kids of that like super interesting Capricorn, like 89 to 93 thing when Uranus and Neptune came together and Saturn was in the mix. There's a lot of genius and like earth wisdom, earth technology coming through. Like this kid who, you know, came up with the idea to turn the Texas-sized plastic island in the Pacific into a power plant, into a green power plant. You know what I mean? I think there are things like this, like amazing inspiration that are going to help bring into form, into reality, breakthrough earth-based technologies. So Uranus into Taurus really excites me. We know that when Uranus ingressed Aries to stay for some time, it was the day that the Fukushima event happened. And I think that inspiration of, hey, this nuclear power thing's not really hip, you know, it's not really working for the earth. It's that kind of thing that has inspired a lot of response to it that will then come through in grounded shifts that will make sense and really bring some healing here. So I hope for that for all of us. And I think what Mercury's doing is he's helping us in a way bridge the realms of dream and reality, of energy and matter, of subtle and solid. Because what Mercury did is he saw Saturn November 27th, station retrograde, last degree of Sagittarius, came back to see Saturn a few days later. And it was like, look, I'm not going to allow us to forget these last 2.5 years, Saturn Sag, maybe even these last 29.5 years, Saturn around from Capricorn to Capricorn. And let's remember that. And he'll have a third conjunction with Saturn on January 12th, now in Capricorn. So he's like, let's remember all that and then bring it also into reality. But there's this magical thing that Mercury does that I call the meta retrograde, which is that if you look at the Mercury synodic cycles, if you begin with just interior star points like we do with Venus, they've been in the Earth signs for the last 2 years, 2016, 2017, beginning in the December of 2015, 6 Earth cycles. All right. And Mercury cycle is about 4 months long. And now he shifts to fire. So beginning on December 12th, Mercury cazimi between Earth and the Sun in the sign of Sagittarius. So there's a really amazing thing like Saturn moving from the fire into Earth, from Sag into Capricorn, Uranus coming up in May, moving from the fire into the Earth, Aries into Taurus. But Mercury's going backwards, and he'll do 4 fire cycles. And it's this slower burn. It's this longer thing where Capricorn will become Sagittarius, where Taurus will become Aries, where Virgo will become Leo. And there'll be 4 of these fire cycles like that. And so I think Mercury is really helping us kind of bridge the gap. So this week in this Mercury retrograde cycle, it's almost like 6 or 2 years worth of just elemental transformation. We were meant to kind of go crazy. I know a bunch of astrologers like myself who've had colds and like fire throats. And I think that's part of it. I've been having these weird like fever dreams and stuff too. So to me, I think the thing about 2018 is dream into reality, spirit into matter. In 2017 was really setting the stage for that, for us to get a little bit looser, to be inspired. And some of that is just into the reactions of what's not working.
It seems really fitting that the Mercury retrograde that we're just finishing up started with Saturn. As you talk about that, you know, it's kind of like preparing us, you know, slow down. Next year is a little bit more solid and real, and talking about getting real. I'm going to share my screen now and just keep an eye on to see what everyone else is going to see. Just because we've got a few slides that we're going to, let's say, talk over. So let me just get that happening and check that that's what indeed we see. Do we see us three down the side there?
Yes.
Yep.
You do, but hang on one sec. Just
although
Mercury retrograde being.
Well, Julija, we're in control on our end of what we see. Like,
yes,
you can
I know. Yeah,
you.
okay. You just tell me. I think it's whoever's speaking now. So as I go through some of these slides, because I'm going to look at some of the ingress charts and so on, both of you just chime in wherever you feel appropriate. Okay, so you don't need to mute yourself or what have you.
I have one comment before you start.
Sure.
Based on what Gemini just said, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about how the Mercury ruled people that have, especially, you know, a lot of Virgo rising charts have Gemini at the midheaven and Virgo rising, so they've got double angles, Mercury ruled, or their sun, moon, or Virgo or Gemini, or they just have a strong Mercury. So I think for all those people out there, they are going to experience more of this fiery energy coming up for them in 2018, and maybe get launched in a new way. You know, you may see something, you know, really big kind of occurring for them. And I think the other people, the Saturn ruled people, are Aquarius and Capricorn, Uranus, Saturn ruled people. They're going to get more grounded and down to earth, because we're going from fire to the earth. So I think individuals will experience it a little bit different, but I think what we're talking about here is on the world stage, you know, on the collective. This is what the planets are, how they're taking shape, and how a lot of us are going to experience the energy.
Yeah, I mean, the world there is made of both types of people and many more, right? And there's a really cool thing about Mercury and Saturn making these three conjunctions, that they did so visibly as evening stars, and then in the hidden places under the beams, and in January visibly as morning stars. They're literally showing you the end and the beginning, right? And yeah, I mean, I would say just for people in general, I mean, also, you know, if you're in a perfected Mercury year, transits by to Mercury, Saturn, right? So the lifelong assignments, like I'm Gemini rising, so maybe more mercurial, but entering a Saturn year. And so that's, of course, always something to look at as well. And bridging those gaps, like I just love that they're conjunctions where Mercury stationing, and the end will be too in January, Mercury stationing. So Saturn's actually moving very fast in his own particular synodic cycle, and Mercury moving as slow as possible. So they're kind of switching roles. And it speaks again to this idea of like, how can we slow down so like the fast stuff can actually come into form and be real this year? That's what I'd love to see.
Great insights, agents. Very, very good. So this is the chart of what we call the Saturn ingress, which happened yesterday. So Saturn at 0 Capricorn. Now, often we do see, let's say, the worst or the best of the sign as it is at the 0 degrees of the sign, especially if a timing of a planet through a sign will be a few years. So the slower moving planets. So be very aware of what's going on for yourselves in these, let's say, in this next 2 weeks, or I think it's 9 days that it stays at 0 Capricorn. But why that's so significant is because of the cardinal lineup, as we call, as astrologers look at 0 Aries, 0 Libra, 0 Cancer, and 0 Capricorn as the axis mundi points, or the world points, so that any planets kind of going through this area are really quite significant. Of course, as we're going into this, we've just had this incredible galactic alignment of everything at the galactic center. And of course, 0 Capricorn is still in that vicinity as well. The reason that, of course, we called this session today Saturnalia is because, again, that's Saturn moving into Capricorn around the solstice. This is now the solstice chart, is really, quite significant for the era that we're living in, or, the time, again, of 2018 that we're moving into. And I, like the rebel in me, would love to see the world actually celebrate Saturnalia, for the reason that in those days, in ancient Rome, I should explain, in ancient Rome, there was a 7-day festival honouring the Lord of Time and Karma, Saturn. And, it's the last thing that we kind of think of celebrating in this day and age of astrology. Oh my God, we're going to celebrate Saturn. It seems to have more of a, heavy connotation to it and that type of thing. But that's what I wanted to bring this up for, because of reminding us that, what we can look forward into in this time of Saturn in its home sign of Capricorn is that some, let's see that some things will get working better. We'll get working more for real. We'll be grounded for the right reasons and that type of thing. And I love the idea of the role reversal of master and slave. Like, just imagine if we could go into the White House and take over for a bit for those 7 days and just show a few things differently. I know we're not slaves as such, but in that just role reversal idea of what used to happen at Saturnalia. So it's quite a rebellious, like Saturn rules Aquarius as well. So, from Capricorn to Aquarius, we've got actually, a 5-year plan of Saturn in its home signs as well.
Actually,
so,
6 years.
Yeah.
6 Sun-Saturn conjunctions in Capricorn and Aquarius. So then that's because Saturn moves so slowly in these signs, because he's far from the sun. Yeah.
I actually counted that Saturn in Capricorn will have 1,021 days. It's the things we do as we're looking into this.
I'm going to put a chart up on my wall and cross
the days off.
1,000 in how many days?
Yeah. And this time of Saturnalia was very much, the way that the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans viewed Saturn was, what I found out just recently, also doing some more research, was the average age of a person in ancient Greece was 30 years old. So, that's a Saturn cycle. So, in this day and age, we know much more about the cosmos. Back in those times, hang on, I've got a picture of it there. It was like Saturn was at the edge of the universe, or Saturn was at the edge of the known universe at that time. So it was associated with the Grim Reaper. I'm not saying that it isn't anymore, sorry. It's associated with death, the end of time, the end of life, the karma, reaping the rewards of the life lived down here on Earth. And it reminds me of this picture by Flammarion, where in this day and age, we have much more of a cosmos beyond us now. We live a lot longer. Saturn perhaps, has not different principles, but renewed principles of what they were 2,000 years ago. But then having a look at Saturn was known to rule the golden age. This is kind of an analogy to think that, it's not bad times coming up. Let's focus on the good and the positive of what Saturn through Capricorn and Aquarius in its own signs will do for us. So it was a time when a golden race of mortal men who lived in the time of Kronos, when he was reigning in heaven, and they lived. Now I've cut this off and I can't see because our little pictures are there. Without sorrow of heart, remote and free from toil. The fruitful earth Can you read that out, Gemini? Because
I can, yeah, Julia, I can read it, and I'd love to just say something about this too. So I'll read it from the top. A golden race of mortal men, let's say humans, who lived in the time of Kronos when he was reigning in heaven, and they lived like gods without sorrow of heart, remote and free from toil. Miserable age rested not on them. The fruitful earth unforced the fruitful earth unforced bare them fruit abundantly and without stint. They dwelt in ease and peace upon their lands and many good things. And what I'd love to add about that is that how astrology is seeing Saturn, or modern mythos is seeing Saturn. And we talk about this father castrating, baby eating, sickle toting, master of karma and death Saturn. And it's such a trip because you can look also into these myths, and there's this thing that's not hidden. That's like, wow, Saturn was this god of agriculture and the golden age. And I think it reminds us in some ways that history is written by the victors, and mythologically saying that is Saturn's son, the one that he didn't eat, the one that was hidden away and grew up in a cave on Mount Ida, Zeus or Jupiter, right? And to me, like, if you think about what Jupiter in a way represents as this thunderbolt throwing God in the dome of heavens, it's literally our brain. And we've been living in this age of the brain where these electrical impulses, and very often reactionary and too quick electrical impulses and too much thought. And what Saturn really is the age of the body mind, and the age where we were a little bit more connected as earthlings, as animals. And I believe we're engaging, we're remembering the body. This is part of the elemental shifts of this year ahead, so that we can open into the age of the heart, which is not divided, which is shared. And there's purpose to this, there's beauty to this. But one thing I would say about Saturn, we read about these things, and I feel, and I've seen this in visions, and I've really heard reports, especially from wise elders, and especially women wise elders that I've had the honor of sitting with and having drum journeys with out under the sky, and bringing back tales of grandmother Saturn, where it's and this is true to my original training in the shamanic astrology mystery school, where Capricorn looks like the council of grandmothers and the wisdom of earth and the old traditions that keep the ways, right? And I think that if we open our hearts to that potentiality, or even that promise in this ingress of Saturn Capricorn, it's not something that we have to fear or worry about things getting more patriarchal. Capricorn is an earth sign. It's a chalice sign. Traditionally, we would say a feminine sign. And this is that side of Saturn, that nocturnal side of Saturn, that I believe that the brain in a way has cast away and written history in such a way that we've forgotten what it is to be an embodied earthling. And if we start there, which is part of the slowing down, right? If we start there, then I think one of the things that's really alive for us in this time, this ingress, is remembering the true traditions of earth. And that happens when we go to our elders with our ears open.
Well said. Thanks, Gemini. That was great. Now, just another one, the Age of Kronos, that was written in Metamorphosis by Ovid. Can you just read that again? I've just got the little...
Sure. From Metamorphosis. In the beginning was the golden age, when men of their own accord, without threat of punishment, without laws, maintained good faith and did what was right. The earth itself, without compulsion, untouched by the hoe, unfurrowed by any share, produced all things spontaneously. It was a season of everlasting spring.
So this is all possible as we consider building a better world. And that, this is just, of course, just to open our minds to that again, because we can be very much in fear of what is ahead and what we're trying to sort of accomplish on the planet, and believe that things are will get better, with the resources on the planet, with the way the economy is shared, with the refugees with no homes, with the starving people, there's just so many things still that it's like, how can this not be done properly somehow? For a lot of us, that breaks our hearts. So where we can take somewhat control of that would be or help or be of service or, you know, do our responsible role in the betterment of the greater good for the benefit of humanity and that type of thing. It's a very Saturnian role as well to take on. I just put this picture in again because our consciousness has exploded so much beyond the realm of Saturn these days that Saturn is no longer that fearful god, to me anyway, at the edge of the universe. There is so much more beyond that, as we all know. So yeah, here's the Saturn ingress chart. Is there anything you want to say about the chart of the ingress, any of you?
Yeah, I just want to add that the feminine force will be much more involved in the coming year, in this coming cycle, because Capricorn is a feminine sign. The earth and water signs are considered feminine. The Venus star point going into Capricorn is going to highlight that. The way I look at these Venus star points, we have 5 of them pretty much active in an 8-year cycle. And so you want to look at the 5 degrees around the wheel, which I'll be actually sharing in my slideshow in my webinar when we do our webinar. But I want you to all think of the fact that besides Saturn, the background is the Venus star point pumping out energy through Capricorn. There it is. Thank you for that. So you see one of the 5 right now is that Capricorn star. And the one we're going into in early January is 19 degrees Capricorn. So we will get a bit more of the feminine energy and like I was alluding to before, more of an earth management instead of the fiery roaring kind of energy we had in fire with the Venus star. We're going to have more of a grounded, let's take care of things. I mean, Saturn went into Capricorn yesterday. We've only had it for 1 day. And on the very first day of Saturn in Capricorn, we had here in the US anyway, we had this unbelievable tax bill put into legislation that I mean, you're going to see what it means about laws and restrictions. If we have any restrictions coming up with Saturn and Capricorn these next few years, it's going to be through the legislation and the laws that are passed to either take or remove more power from people, as they've already been increasingly more removed as time goes on. And also the people taking sort of the law in a way into their own hands in terms of we have to make our own laws. We have to rewrite the laws. We have to put our voice into making this world that we want, that this vision that we have of honoring the earth and life and the continuation of that. Yeah, there's the Venus star point chart too. I'll have some of those charts also going on in the webinar that we do, some slides and some commentary about that. But I think Saturn together with the Venus star point this year is really going to be, and of course Pluto is with the Venus star point as well, even closer, in closer conjunction. I think, you know, this Capricorn influence is going to very strongly be felt. And it's a sign of, you know, not getting overwhelmed by forces outside of you, but taking, you know, more personal power, empowering yourself.
Well, as we see the ingress chart of Saturn into Capricorn, we've got the Moon and Pluto conjunct, and that's exactly the degree of where the conjunction of Venus, Pluto, and the Sun will be on the 8th, 9th of January. So that's quite fitting, isn't it, for going into 2018.
Right.
We know, I'd love to add a thing there, Julija. Yeah. Could you go back to the ingress chart?
Yep.
Well, so one thing is, remember when Jupiter ingressed Scorpio, we also had that Moon Pluto conjunction, right?
Yeah.
And it and it brings in, just like when we have this Venus star point in Capricorn in January, she's also receiving a sextile Mars and Jupiter together in Scorpio. there's something, and these times are so cool. This has actually been happening every 60 years about since the late 1700s, and will happen for a little while longer, where like in November 2018, Jupiter will ingress Sagittarius. So we have these times where Jupiter in Sagittarius and Saturn in Capricorn, both of these planets at home. And on the other end, as you mentioned before, traditionally Saturn's known as Capricorn and Aquarius, well, Jupiter as Sagittarius and Pisces. So they'll have a meeting, I think most of us know, on December solstice 2020 in the very first degree of Aquarius. And then Jupiter later will ingress Pisces. And so on the beginning of this thing, we have Sagittarius, Jupiter, Capricorn, Saturn. And at the end of it, Pisces, Jupiter, well, Aquarius, Saturn. Right. And that pattern doesn't happen forever. That's a really intriguing thing that's happening in our time. I think that in of itself would be a wonderful webinar to have sometime. But one aspect that I'm really interested in this chart as well, with Jupiter squaring the lunar nodes interests me, but also Venus almost perfectly square Chiron, that aspect perfected today. And I think it's going back to a lot of what Arielle's speaking about. I mean, Venus and Chiron were conjoined in January, and they almost conjoined again, right? Venus station retrograde early March, and then direct right at the degree, the 27th degree of Pisces, that's known as the degree of her exaltation, and right with Chiron, right? And so I'm interested at this time of the Saturn ingress and the December solstice coming up, that Venus and Chiron are making this closing square of their respective synodic cycle. It seems really interesting to me. And it's the end of Chiron in Pisces as well. Chiron will ingress Aries next year. He'll retrograde back into Pisces. In fact, the Venus Chiron cycle next year is kind of Pisces tuned, but it also shows like the opening square and the opposition of the cycle will be Chiron and Aries. And it's showing us where that whole cycle's going. And it's bringing me into lots of different things, like the Chironian themes of compassion and empathy born through the wound, and the wound of abandonment. And, you know, being a freak, like Chiron was abandoned by his mother because he's born half horse, was actually the result of his father Saturn in the moment of infidelity when he was seated, taking the form of a horse to escape detection by his wife. So there's a lot of this hidden in the Chiron energetic, where the initial wound before the poisoned arrow, whatever that we hear about mythically, was this abandonment and this deception in a way. But that abandonment opened for Chiron this incredible empathy, where he then was the mentor and in a way the father figure to all of these orphaned demigods. And I would say in a way, you know, in the quest for the awakening mystic, which you all are, because here you are listening to this, we are in a way these like abandoned demigods, you know, like remembering our spiritual self, remembering our spiritual side, and connecting into that mentorship. And I'm feeling a lot in just like the potential wounding of compassion and feeling the weight of the world and the isolation that can live in the way of the mystic really alive here. And I think, I mean, it's weird to say that Saturn's going to bring healing to this, but there's, in a sense, this opportunity to come down into the body, to remember we are people of earth, earthlings, you know, and that, I think Chiron is such a great and beautiful reminder of this, because, you know, it's half horse and we're all animals. And to remember that horse side of ourselves, that embodied four-legged side of ourselves, is, I think, part of the healing and the remembrance here.
And we're cosmic as well.
We are. Yeah. And speaking of that, I mean, I don't know if there's time at the end, though. I'd love to share a few things about the galactic alignment and the galactic cross in this time that we're living in, which I feel is the most important thing of any solstice that's happening in our age.
I'll put you over to that in a sec. Just introducing now the solstice chart, or the coming together of Saturn and the Sun, as we talked about before. It's a very similar chart, because it happens like 36 hours after 2 days, I think it was, after the Saturn ingress. And so giving, you know, the flavor of the next 3 months, really, because the astrological year for us starts at Aries, when the Sun's at Aries. So this is kind of a looking into the next 3 months. And again, I think there's the significance is perhaps more about the Saturn being there with the Sun, as Gemini and Arielle have talked about. But for those of you that are probably a bit more, newer to the astrology, or kind of logged in here going, what are you guys talking about? Well, we show the charts because we want you to get more aware of what we're actually looking at. As you see a round chart with planets around it, get used to what we're talking about, because it's a really fabulous thing to be connected to, just in whatever way you come into astrology. As Gemini was saying before, how many times do we hear people, that, let's say, start getting into astrology? I so often hear, and I'm sure it's true for a lot of you out there, is that it's like a remembering. People feel as though they're remembering something that they've always known, and that just kind of sends shivers down my spine, because it's just like, it was like that for me. I'm sure it was like that for a lot of you. Like, we're remembering something that we always knew, and so we're getting back, I suppose, more aligned with it as we go, as more astrology happens in the world and so on. I'm just showing this graph here for the timing of, end of December now, where we're at, where the Earth, with the sun in front of it, let's say if you were looking at the sun, behind the sun we've got what we call the galactic center, in a sense, amongst the stars between Scorpio and Sagittarius, and that's the alignments we're looking at. And of course, at the moment, what do we say? I picked something. Sorry, I picked something out from what Olga had written, Olga, Agent 23, Olga Morales. She wrote this up the other day, and I found it, and I asked her if I could share it. But, as we celebrate the solstice, we're going into the time where the sun stands still for 3 days and then begins to move, and that becomes the celebrations of Christmas Day, or what became to be Christmas Day, but once was the pagan celebrations of the standstill of the sun. And there's so many stories about all these times from different cultures, and there's too many things to share about that. But I believe Astrology Hub's doing something about more of the story of Christmas, which we're going to share in our thread over the weekend as well. But at midnight on the 25th of December, the sun is at 3 degrees of Capricorn, the point where it is born again after the solstice of 3 days, turning northbound in declination. It is also opposite the brightest star, Sirius. This is the star of the 3 wise men, 3 stars in Orion's belt, were following to find the new Messiah. We put a star on top of our Christmas trees as a symbol of Sirius. So at the moment, like in Australia, well, actually for all of us, because the sun is opposite Sirius, not exactly, but it's so bright, and it is the brightest star in the sky. The tree symbolizes the tree of life, the Milky Way, where stars are born. We hang balls on our Christmas trees as symbols of the stars and planets. Jesus was said to be born of a virgin. We see Virgo rising at the east at midnight. And in the stars of Cancer, there is a cluster called the Manger, where Jesus was said to be born. I thought that was just, a lovely kind of, combo of the mythology of the stars, the time of the solstice, and so on. So Gemini, perhaps this is a good time for you to go into your share of the galactic alignment, because it is about the solstice, yeah?
Sure, yeah. I just want to give a visual of this. So I would say this is the most important, aspect, if you want to call it that, or alignment of our lifetimes. Like, this is literally the thing of our incarnation. And it's called galactic alignment. You might have heard that term before. What's happening is the solstices in our time are aligned to the galactic cross. And I want to show you a little bit of what that means. I feel that actually part of this idea of coming into Earth, like Uranus, who's a very strong figure of astrology coming into Earth, will help us, I hope, earth our astrology and get out and be with the stars and learn how the sky and the chart are actually one, and learn how to see the chart in the sky. As you know, Control, that's like my principal devotion, is to reconnect that part of astrology to nature. So let me see, I'll share my screen here. And this is this moment where I am in Seattle. And And this is Stellarium, which is this amazing software that you can get for free at stellarium.org. It works on Mac and PC. I highly recommend. And you can cast your birth chart from like the astronomical point of view and see what was aligned when you were born. It's a wonderful thing to do. And it allows us to play games like Take the Atmosphere Away. So it looks starry out, and rewind in time. And so what I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to go to solstice tomorrow, and I'm just going to rewind a little bit. And this is going to be kind of in fast forward. I don't have time to explain at the pace that I would like to some of the things that I'm going to show you, okay? But I did put up a long post yesterday on my page about galactic alignments, about an hour long, that explains some of these things in more detail. But what I'll show is this. First of all, look at where the sun is at this time, okay? So I'll take the planets away so you can better see. This is the galactic center. This is what astronomers call the galactic bulge, which is kind of sexy, but it loses a lot of the mystical essence of it. This is where the Ouroboros snake, as you might be able to see, is biting its own tail. The snake is the cosmic serpent. It's the Milky Way. And here in the center of the Milky Way is the mystic sun of our sun, which also astronomy suggests is very literal, that as the moon is orbiting the Earth and the Earth is orbiting the sun is orbiting galactic center. And really very recently, it's been proven, or so they say, that there is a super massive black hole that lives there. A friend reminds me that you never say black hole without saying black hole, white hole from a mystical standpoint, which I really like. And if you look at the image of the galactic butterfly, or Hunab Ku, which is spelled Hunab space Ku, you'll see a way that it seems the Mayans symbolize this great space in the sky where it looks like this spiral and a black hole. And the way that it's come down to me is they describe it as great grandmother or grandfather who created us and feed us with light. So this is this amazingly powerful place of the sky. There's so much energy there, no matter which way you look at it. And I really recommend you look at it. And that's not happening right now because, I mean, if you look at the galactic center today, it's going to look like this, right? The sun is right there. But that's the point of this thing, that at our time on solstice, the sun is aligned to the galactic center. And this is not only always true. So just really quickly, I'll show you. This is the ecliptic plane. It's the plane of our solar system. It's the plane of Earth's orbit about the sun. So from Earth's point of view, the sun is always there. And that's the constellations of the zodiac. Julija shared before that the constellations, and these aren't signs, they're different things, but the constellations traditionally associated with the only two signs that we draw with arrows, they're Sagittarius and Scorpio. Those arrows in the sky, the tail of the scorpion and the arrow of the archer, they point directly at galactic center. And when I say that, I mean that this proposed supermassive black hole 26,000 light years away from us, it's called Sagittarius A by the scientists, and I'll show you where that is. So this is the galactic center. All right, so usually as astrologers we'll show galactic center at 27 degrees Sagittarius on the chart. That's where Mercury and Saturn met twice already. So much energy has been there, more with the planetary alignments this year than in a long time. But that is because the galactic center is not on the ecliptic. What we do, like in the case of Antares, you draw a perpendicular line from a fixed star up to the ecliptic plane. That's what's happening when we take galactic center. We bring it up to 27 degrees tropical Sagittarius. But I'll bring in another... well, let me just say that the Milky Way itself is what we call the galactic plane. And you can see where they cross in the ecliptic is right here. Okay, it's a very important place. I'll bring in another plane here. This is the plane of Earth's rotation or day, called the celestial equator. And this blue curve here. So where they are most separated in the tropical zodiac, so those are the tropics. Here's the Tropic of Capricorn, or 0 degrees Capricorn. All right. So in our day and age, this galactic cross is aligned to the 0 degrees Capricorn point. So while we're projecting galactic center up here, what the solstice alignment is about, bringing the sun, and we can see the sun right on that galactic cross, right in the mouth where the serpent bites its own tail. Okay, let me show this to you. In 500 years from now, there's December solstice sun. You see how it's not in there? I'll show it to you 2,000 years before then, 517. I'm going to Common Era. All right, and see, it was way back here between the goat and the archer, right? So it's in our time. It began, many suggest, around 1975, where the December solstice sun first came into this galactic cross, and will go until about 2025. 1998 is usually seen as the very center point, and the Mayans seem to be looking at 2012, as we know. So this is figuratively and in many senses the birth of the sun, we like to say, at 0 Capricorn, right? So sing a Christmas tune or whatever. And then the birth of the sign is aligned to great grandmother, grandfather that feeds us with light, right? So here's, again, winter solstice, December solstice this year. And not only is the sun there, but this is the day of Saturn's Cazimi. All right, so Earth, Sun, Saturn, the mysterious galactic cross in the mouth of the cosmic serpent, the Ouroboros, right? And this has been happening again since 1975, 1998, harmonic convergence, maybe the mathematical center point of December solstice at the galactic cross, 2012, the Mayan calendar thing, where it's really starting to come into consciousness. But now it starts coming into form. It starts coming into matter. Why? Because that's what Saturn does. So Saturn coming into this alignment is so significant. And if this inspires you, I really invite you to go check out the work of John Major Jenkins, specifically this book. It's called Galactic Alignment. John Major Jenkins very sadly passed away this year. But this is an amazing book I feel all astrologer and all mystics in our time should read. This is an amazing thing that only happens every 26,000 years, according to the modern model, that December solstice will align to the galactic cross at galactic center, or every 13,000 years about, that a solstice will align to the galactic center, or every 6,500 years that one of the points of the medicine wheel is the axis mundi, as Julija described before, the world points can align to the galactic cross. So we're having this point where the medicine wheel, the earth cross, is aligning to the galactic cross. You can find John Major Jenkins at his website, johnmajorjenkins.com. And very sadly, this amazing researcher passed away this year. And I also want to share, I'm presenting a course of sacred astronomy for astrologers, which you can find at morethan-astrology.com/sacred astronomy. And the whole idea is to get into these things where we bring the chart out to the sky, learn how to see the midheaven with our eyes, learn how to see the houses, with our face, experience with our body, mind, this zodiac, this beautiful mechanism of the tropical zodiac, which is aligned to the medicine wheel and to the directions.
Very good, 23. That's why we call you 23, and that's why we promoted you this year. No, I'm just kidding. No, really important work that you're doing. Congratulations, because I think it's been a big year for you as well. With all, getting that work out there, aligning astrologers with the real sky. So
yeah, it has, and it's been wonderful. And, Cosmic Intelligence Agency has been an incredible support of this. I mean, yeah, just looking at my chart, it's like, how's this happening? I mean, the eclipse really helped break things through for me. And the lunar eclipse preceding was right at my midheaven. So I'm wondering about that. But yeah, I'm just putting in the work and also meeting tribe. And it's been so nice to be an agent of this wonderful Cosmic Intelligence Agency, because you know, here you are spreading the word and gathering team from all around the world so we can each give our own piece to this beautiful, evolving, living craft of astrology. So I'm very grateful for that, and for all of you members of the CIA out there who are supporting the mission.
Thank you. Well, yeah, one of our live people here, hang on, now I've lost the thread, you know, bringing up the word sacred, like, you know, this is all very, you know, the galactic alignments make it feel so very sacred with what's going on at this, you know, this amazing time, as you said, Saturn, Earth aligning galactically. And it's quite rare. So, you know, significant times that we're living in, for sure. So just moving on quickly, just a quick look at the New Year's Day chart, because we were going to do this for 40 minutes. I won't keep you too much longer. I know, Gemini, you've got something else on, so if you have to leave, let me know, but we won't be too much longer.
I want to make sure I correct something before I do, and I have a little bit longer anyway. Okay. I was wrong earlier when I said that Moon was conjoined Pluto when Jupiter's ingress happened. That was just the beginning of Cosmic Intelligence Agency retreat. And actually, I think what it was Moon conjoined Pluto in Capricorn during the Jupiter Cazimi, when Jupiter and Sun were.
Our retreat was with Jupiter, Sun, Cazimi. So we're very Cazimi kind of agents or agency. We're always on.
In the heart of it.
We're in the heart of it. That's the way to say. Sorry, Ariel.
So Ariel told me before, I have to make sure I don't have hidden things and that I don't break the law and that I come clean when I'm wrong. So that was me listening to the great advice of the astrologers here.
Fantastic. Well, this is particularly what I love about the agency and meeting the agents. And some of us haven't met in real life, and we only met in real life, a few years ago. Sorry, we met in Tulum in Mexico at the Venus transit, the big Venus transit.
Chichen Itza and the Venus transit.
That's right. And then Gemini, I met you earlier this year in Seattle. But what we do is as the agency or agents, we like to share our information. It's like we learn from each other. We learn so much from each other, and that is a really, important part of astrology in the world, for me at least, in this day and age. So, can you see that screen? I didn't even know what is going on. Hang on. Play. There we go. So the New Year's Day chart, just quickly. I've set it for New Zealand, which is it's close to the first landmass that gets the New Year's Day or the New Year's light. And we can see that the moon's in Gemini. And again, what we've been talking about is that incredible stellium of planets and the black moon Lilith in Capricorn. So it really is the Capricorn sort of timing. And then Jupiter is very much exactly squaring the nodes as we go into 2018, with Mars about to connect to that a few days later. But let us go back to what we're focusing on as the start of the year as well, is the Venus star point that happens in Capricorn. As Ariel was explaining before, it's part of the whole system of the Venus cycle, which is made up of five star points, which happen in your astrology charts, or in the zodiac, let's say, in 5 particular points for a particular era, and they move slowly backwards over time, let's say through our astrology charts or through the zodiac. So we started a honoring of that because we're the 3 of us, I know there's many more of us as well, Venus star followers, with an Aries star point webinar last year, and we're doing another one on, January the 5th.
January 6th.
January the 6th. Sorry, it's the 6th. Yes, that's right. It's just that I'm a day in front. And anyway, I've got the info of that coming up. But we're going to be looking very much more into this star point of Capricorn. Ariel, could you tell us a little bit of what you're going to be sort of introducing into that webinar for the Venus Capricorn star point?
Well, for one thing, if you can go back to that last slide for a moment. This is the first time in a very long time, probably 250 years, that Pluto and the Capricorn Venus star point are aligned. You know, the thing that makes this unique, this star point wheel unique, is it's slowly beating. It's like a slow beating heartbeat in the background of what's happening. We track all the planets. We always track Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, Jupiter, you know, all the planets, the eclipses, moving counterclockwise around the solar system. But the Venus star is slowly moving clockwise in the background, and these 5 points are really up for about a decade, at least 8 years, sometimes even to 12 years. And I wanted to draw attention to the fact that Pluto and the Venus star point this year in January of 2018 are going to be conjunct. And that's pretty big. That's very rare. It's not rare that the transiting Venus star point conjuncts Pluto or aspects Pluto in some way, like opposition. We've had a couple of oppositions in the last, let's say, 30 or 40 years. 9/11 happened during one of those points where we had a Gemini star point and a Gemini Sagittarius opposition going on at the same time. And, you know, you do have some pretty big world events happening when the star point aligns with Pluto. But here we are in Capricorn, and I've been watching this for years, wondering, okay, what's this all about? So I'm going to be talking in the webinar about that. And if you could go back to that 5-pointed star again for a moment, I'll tell you how it's tied in. Look at those Scorpio degrees. These degrees, I'd like people to be really aware of following these 5 degrees on the star wheel that are operating kind of in the background. You don't always see them, but when planets transit over them, things happen. I mean, it makes an impact. And that 1 to 3 degree Scorpio is the Scorpio star point of our time. And, you know, I heard dozens and dozens of astrologers trying to explain the whole outburst of the sexual scandals and people falling from power due to that whole sexual thing, misuse of power, sexual abuse, etc., as Jupiter entering Scorpio, which of course is true, partly. But Jupiter enters Scorpio every 12 years. And I have been tracking this for a while now, that these early degrees of Scorpio, where the heartbeat of the Venus star has been beating, you know, since 2010, when it was at 5 degrees Scorpio, all the way up to, let's say, 2022, when it's in 29 Libra, we're talking a very small space of the zodiac, the first 5 degrees of Scorpio. And when planets come across there, as Jupiter did in early October, we had this whole sexual scandal and abuse, you know, the revelations of abuse at the highest powers. But it wasn't just a one-time shot. I've been watching planets go across these early Scorpio degrees now for a good 8 years. And every time something big transits those degrees, we get another break, you know, a story like that. So I'm going to say that it's what people haven't really always seen the connection of. Yes, Jupiter went into Scorpio, Mercury went into Scorpio, Venus went into Scorpio, the sun passed over those early degrees, all at the time that all these allegations were happening. But it was the backdrop of the Venus star point, which I call the sacred feminine, operating in the background of all of this, that gave the energy to this to really come out at the deepest levels. And it's still happening. It's not going to stop. I feel like it's just going to keep happening. You know, it's going to be until October we get that 3 degree Scorpio point again when she starts her new cycle. But I think this Me Too campaign and the energy that's been started from this whole thing that's already been unleashed it's not going to go away.
Mm.
And I think it ties very succinctly to the Capricorn star point conjunct Pluto as well, because it is people in power in high places. I think you're seeing that from both star points, both Scorpio and Capricorn. So I'll be talking a little bit about that, but mainly taking people through the 5-pointed star and how to watch it, how to track your own life cycle, and how it's hitting your chart, what it's bringing up for you in that particular period. And just the beauty and elegance and grace of how that Venus star cycle is working and operating in our lives as what I call the cosmic heartbeat in the background.
I'll be looking at something similar. Actually, I am going to take more of an approach in this upcoming Capricorn Venus Star Point webinar that we'll hold on January 3rd, right? I'm going to take more of a historical approach, or we could say herstorycal approach, and look at significant passages and moments in the feminist movement as aligned to the signatures of the Venus star point. For example, like the Aries star point began, or there was a premonition of it beginning, these points that shifted from Taurus into Aries and from Sagittarius into Scorpio right around the ratification of the 19th Amendment in this country, was women's right to vote. And I'm really intrigued by this Me Too movement. I think a lot of us have been looking at Jupiter and Scorpio, right? And just kind of expanding in authenticity and taking things out of hidden places. But, I think October 5th was a date that's often looked at, and that was also Venus opposite Chiron, and also around that time. And then Venus conjoined Mars. And there was this amazing thing where Venus and Mars almost met in Aries, and she hit the brakes and went retrograde. And she's like, not yet. And he had to get initiated into this new cycle, kind of had to get burned in the light of the sun, it felt like to me. And then Venus caught up with Mars as a morning star, then in the sign of Virgo, and on October 5th. And there's a feeling of like, what does it mean to be like a virgin? Which certainly has nothing to do with that chastity rap that, we were hit with, to basically also take away some of the strength of true undependence or independence. And I'm looking forward to sharing about that. But more and more, it just seems like such a signature of our time. And yeah, there is an amazing symbol, like when Jupiter then came into visibility and was really showing up as morning star, and Venus has been there. Time magazine made the persons of the year the silence breakers, which is so intriguing.
That's
but then
really
we can look
important
at
point. It's gotten big. Yeah.
One of the runners up, however, was Trump, who won that award last year, right? And he's been like accused, at least publicly, by 20 different women of misconduct or abuse, right? So obviously there's a lot of work to do in this regard. And he won the award last year, but we can also see that energetic, very much like part of the catalyst that is helping this come to light. So this Venus Aries point is amazing, and we will have a couple more of them before she shifts back to Pisces. So that's what I'm going to be speaking about, is how the entire pentagram over time retrogrades through the constellations and the signs, spending about 104 years, which was the Mayan number for Venus in one particular sign. So I'm looking forward to doing it. It's something I've been meaning to do for a while, but it's really charged information. I think, especially coming from a man in a masculine monkey suit, it's like a little trickier too. But I just want to honor like the astrology. And you were saying this before, Julija, of like this great gift of astrology to bring, what I was hearing is awareness of self. And I remember I was saying earlier, like this is a great time for us to have like a memory practice with Saturn going into Capricorn. I did this like 30-year meditation of the last 30 years. Recently, it was a lot. But astrology is such an amazing gift in that regard. I think we can sometimes lose ourselves when we future trip and lose the moment now, when we're looking at all the 2020s and 2027 eclipses, and wherever we go with it. But it's such a beautiful tool to go back and look at, that thing that happened 9 years ago, or in October, or whatever, and seeing these alignments that those energies showed up in a way which we might do differently if we were aware of it, which is such a great gift of astrology, but just helps us bring confirmation, knowing, even some forgiveness of times in our lives. So I'm glad that everyone watching here is, also aligning to the starry science, and that it's coming back more and more, like the real astrology is living and breathing more and more in the world. And it's such a treat to see. I think that might actually be part of these elemental shifts of the year 2018 too.
Yeah. Thanks, 23. I'm so looking forward to it, because I love what you both, have taught me about the Venus star and how we work together on the information as well. But what I'm going to be particularly sharing for the webinar is I look at the Venus points that happen every 9.5 months as a pentagon around the zodiac. Not so much the pentacle, but of course the pentacle is representative of either looking at the retrograde cycles by themselves or the superior conjunctions by themselves. Either way, there's kind of like two pentacles going on. But I see these 9.5 points as like eclipse points, really, that really highlight a particular area of our lives for the coming in months before and the coming out. And the more research that I've done of that, it's like, oh my God, that's when they produced their album, or this is when they made their website, or there was a real focus of what was going on in particular house for that star point for somebody, and what that's aligned to, like if there's planets in that area and that type of thing. So I'm going to be furthering into those examples. One example that I'm particularly interested in, and this is so relevant to what's going on now. Like I remember in the webinar that we did for our members a few months ago on Bitcoin, as few of us interested in that kind of the cryptocurrency and the rise of that. It's so spot on sort of timing of what's going on. And then, we looked at the charts and stuff, and then we saw that, Saturn in Capricorn is going to try and, put in the rules and the laws around that time. And that's completely started right on time, that the governments are really, honing down and going, this is not going to happen in Russia, or, there are going to be all these rules and regulations now, which is completely different from the wildness of what started. So it's a really good example. And of course, the Pluto-Venus-Sun conjunction being very much about the underworld, or what can be done from other realms as well. And interestingly, the chart that we use for Bitcoin is 3rd of January 2009. I won't go into the details of that, but it has a 4-degree Aries moon, which is where the Venus star point happened last March. Yeah, so it's right part of this particular cycle as well. So anyway, so that's what we're all going to be kind of bringing up on. We've talked about the recap of the star point earlier on, but it's just so significantly, as Arielle was saying, the feminine undercurrent to what is going on in our world. And so I suppose we're just kind of really focused on that, aren't we, as the beginning of the year starts. And also the 2 star points that are made in 1 year. And it's these, every 4 years that we get the Aries and the Scorpio point happen. Of course, they always happen together, because one happens in January and the other one happens on October. But it's the only year that the star point will happen twice. So that's also significant for all of us as well. So do join us if you want to learn more about the Capricorn star point or Venus star point, or generally just how to utilize and work with the Venus star, because you can really learn a lot about yourself, your life, what you're creating in your life, what is being, let's say, I see the Venus star as a fractal flower unfurling in your astrology chart, like all astrology really, but it really just helps you see how you're creating your life as well as you go. I'll just go through these slides and then we'll finish up, because 40 minutes is turned into a bit more than that, but that's usual with the agents. Just to let you all know out there that we have so much more going on with our membership next year. prices are going to rise. I'm not sure if we'll get it organised by January the 1st, but it more likely will be by the March equinox. So if you're thinking of joining, do it now, because it's a really, really special or a good deal, I'd say, because coming up in January, we've got Michael Luton, who's going to do our member month ahead webinar. We've got astrologers like Kelly Surtees, Adam Summer, Kira Sutherland, Chris McRae. The list goes on. So I'm going to put some links in here for as joining the membership. All this comes to you for free as you log into the website, and you can either join our webinars live, or they're all actually uploaded and available for you to look at any time, and therefore, you know, learn a lot more with the amazing agents that we have in our agency. Briefly, we have a report sale on now. So some of you might come into this astrology here and you might have your chart, but you don't know what it means, or you can't afford a reading. There is a quick fix to that, and it's having an astro report. They are computer generated, but they do give you a good idea of what's in your natal chart or what the 12 months ahead is for you as well. So that's on till the Mercury retrograde finishes, and they're also incredibly great gifts. So before I stop sharing these slides, I want to, well, first of all, wish you all a, you know, very happy solstice as this time of year we're in right now. But I think as a kind of a leaving intention is that understanding what intention is and how we can use that without the astrology that we do as we follow, let's say, the universal story of astrology unfolding on our planet, is that the more of us that rise with these, let's say, cosmic intentions, as Lynn McTaggart says, the power of mass intention may ultimately be the force that shifts the tide toward repair and renewal of the planet. And that is, in a sense, the message for this happy solstice. Well, I'm hoping it's happy for all of you. Yeah, so it's kind of like a wrap up for us here, guys. I'm just going to put us back into our speaker view, and I know there's so much more we can talk about, but we kind of got to give it a wrap.
And that was just a preview, folks.
Yeah, that's just a brief thing.
That was just a preview.
Well, I'll say thank you.
Sorry, I just one sec. I was just going to say, we haven't hit on things like we talked about Chiron and Aries a little bit, Uranus in Taurus. There's so much going on, you know, all year and all the time. And so we'd like to break it up as we go, so we get more information on one particular topic instead of trying to sort of overall see the whole thing. Again, there's so much going on out there. Sorry, Gemini.
I just want to say thank you. I'll add to that prayer, if we can call it that, I hope this is a time where we remember to get our feet out in the soil, get out in the world, in fellowship, in tribe, say hello to each other. Remember that humanity is actually beautiful, and that there are ways out that don't have to look like doom and gloom and cataclysmic shakeups. I think that's a place that people fall in a little too easy right now, and in a sense it's giving up. So I just hope that we'll remember at this kind of turning of the seasons and turning of the ages to keep the faith and be in love with Earth. So I have to split. There's another webinar I'm part of at 5 p.m. Pacific, which, by the way, everyone's welcome to join if you want. I'll be sharing it at my Facebook page, which is now Brett Joseph. But it's with the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School. So thank you so much for having me here, and Arielle and Julija. It's really wonderful to team up with you, and I'm really looking forward to this journey.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks. See you, mate. Happy solstice. And
Happy
Arielle,
solstice to everybody. And you, Julija, thank you for presenting this and hosting the platform and all of that, setting it up. And to all our Facebook friends out there who are going to watch this, this will be available later on Facebook, right?
Yeah, it's going to stay there. So yeah, it will.
Okay. So hi to all my friends. Happy solstice to everybody. And I think you're not going to be disappointed with the January 6th webinar we do with the big stuff. We're going to have I've already been working on the slideshow, and there's some really great things that I have to share.
Yeah.
And I
Thank you
know
so
both
much,
Brett
Arielle.
and Julia
Yeah.
do too. So
Great.
okay. All right.
Happy solstice to you as well, Arielle, and then happy
Thank you.
solstice to everyone out there. I'm just kind of going through the phone and looking at some comments, and everyone that was online, thank you so much for being there. But I've just picked out Silly, who I met in Costa Rica, Silly Klein. She says the golden age of creation, and I really love that. You know, as that's what we do astrology for, to create a better world or lives for ourselves. And then I think collectively, as it does unify us so that we can use it for the greater good as well. So happy solstice, everyone. Thank you so much for being online. I'll just check with the people down, you know, on the webinar actually. Everyone's saying thank you, bless you, happy solstice, and same to you all out there as well. And we'll see you next time. So stay in touch, stay online, like us, share us, all that type of thing. And
All right.
we'll see you into
Happy
the
New
next.
Year all. We'll
Happy
see you
New
in the
Year.
new year. Okay.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.